Hi, everybody. Today we're going to go over how to select your topic for the research guide. That would be how to select your discourse community. We're also going to discuss how to do the primary and secondary research for the research guide. And we're also going to go over a couple of student samples. So my hope is that after watching this video and looking through some of the materials on the website, you'll have a more secure grasp of what exactly the research guide is asking you to do. Okay. So first I wanted to talk about the topics. Some of you have sent me some emails saying that you're not quite sure what kind of a discourse community you should be talking about for this assignment. So remember, the point of this course, the entire course, is to give you a chance to explore the kinds of writing that's done in your field, that's done in your major, right? So the idea here is that the topic should really have to do with your major, and in a lot of cases can basically be your major. So I know that some of the topics that some of the students have sent me that I think are good ideas are, I know somebody has business scholars, so there's somebody who's a business major and they want to do, their discourse community will be business scholars. Another one will be doing nutrition, so that would be nutritionists, so the field of nutrition science. Another one is biological sciences. Another one that we'll kind of look at, the samples that we'll look at are jazz musicians, and that person is a music major. Sorry. And then another sample that we'll look at is the field of education. So if you're, so with that being said, if you're still not quite sure what kind of a discourse community would kind of attach to your major, send me an email so that we can figure it out, because this is going to be important not just for this assignment, but you're going to hold on to that discourse community throughout the entire semester. So the purpose of this research guide is for you to kind of do some background, just to become familiar with the types of writing that your field does. And then as we move forward, we're going to build on that, right? So it's important to have the right discourse community right away from this first assignment. So so the next thing is that, and some of you have been a little bit confused. I've gotten a couple of emails about, what exactly it is that you need to do for this assignment. So the main idea here with this assignment is that it requires you to do both primary and secondary research. So that means you're going to have to do interviews, and you're going to have to go to the Wayne State Library Research Guide and do a little bit of exploring and reading around. Now, this is not a research paper. So that means you're not going to go to the library and find journal articles and read them to build some kind of an argument. You're really just trying to get a feel for what kinds of topics are important in your field, and get a feel for where people publish and what kinds of writing is done in your field. So first I wanted to talk about those interviews, all right? So you're going to be interviewing either a professor in the field or a graduate student. Sometimes I think it would probably be best to interview a professor, but if you're having a hard time getting an interview with a professor, you might be able to find a graduate student to interview instead. So you're going to want to look to Chapter 5 of the Wadsworth Guide on interviews. There's a couple of pages in there. So you're going to want to kind of read through that to get some kind of tips on interviews. The one thing that you're going to want to keep in mind when you're doing your interviews is that you're focusing on the kinds of writing done in the field. So you're not exactly focusing on the topics or the content of the field, although you're going to want to ask a little bit about that. But you're really going to focus on what types of writing is done, where are things published, and those kinds of things. I have come up with a list of sample interview questions here. Here we go. So, you can use this list, and, you can add to it, and you're going to want to maybe modify it depending on, all of you are working with different majors and different fields. So you're going to want to modify it a little bit. But you can see that this list all focuses on, for the most part, focuses on the kind of writing. So the very first question is simply, what types of writing do people in this field do? Now, you're going to want to remember that when you interview somebody, sometimes you have to ask follow-up questions to kind of push for more information, right? Because the person that you interview might just give you one or two kind of things, the first things that they can think of. but you're going to want to push them with, is that all? Or maybe say something like, are there other types of writing? What other kinds of writing do people do? Just to get as much as you possibly can, right? You might want to go on to ask, where do people in the field publish? And the same thing, you might have to still kind of keep pushing for more information. Don't just let them give you one or two things. Ask for follow-up. You might want to ask, how do people go about publishing in this field? You might want to ask, what are the top journals in the field? This is an important question for you to know, because that might give you some guidance when you go to the research guide to look through some of those journals. If they tell you, for example, like if you're in the biological sciences, if you ask what are the top journals in the field, the answer will probably be Nature and Science. So that would kind of give you that information that you would need to know to kind of look, you might want to look more particularly and pay more attention to what's going on in nature and what's going on in science, right? You might want to ask, who are some of the key figures in this field? That would be like the top scholars or the top people in the field. And then just ask, what types of reading do you do to stay current in your field, right? What are some current topics of interest in the field? Once again, you might have to push a little here to get at least 3 to 5 current trends in the field. What would you say is the goal of this profession or field? That would be a good question to ask as well. And then this seems a little bit funny, but it fits with the Swales' characteristics, which you're going to have to discuss. So you might want to ask, what are some words or phrases? You don't really want to say Lexis, because they might not know what Lexis means. So what are some words or phrases that this field uses that people who weren't in this field would not understand? And then continue on to, what types of communication do people in the field use to stay in touch with one another? What kinds of information do members of this field share with one another? And what does someone have to do to become a member of this field? So when you're coming up with your research questions, you're going to want to focus on the types of writing that people do in the field. And you're also going to want to focus on Swales' characteristics, right, or criteria, because you're going to have to address how this discourse community fits with those criteria. So this list kind of tries to cover both the kinds of writing as well as the Swales' criteria. So this should give you a good base to build on, and you might want to add some questions to that to make sure that you get as much information from your interviewer as possible. All right. So moving on, so that's the primary research. You're going to have to do an interview. The assignment also asks you to do some secondary research by going to the library guide. So you can see the library guide is linked right here within the assignment description. So we click on the library guide. We have a whole list here of these different guides. And what this is the librarians at Wayne State have kind of put together sites for students to go to. They're basically based on the field, right? So you're going to want to find which one fits for your field. So you can see they're just displayed alphabetically. There's 183 guides, so there's one for basically every major. So if you're in anthropology, this is where you would go. Sometimes, you might have a little bit of a hard time because your major is maybe not as obvious and doesn't fit within one of these research guides. So if you're having a hard time finding a research guide that fits your major, send me an email and we'll work through that together. So if you were doing biological sciences as your discourse community, for an example, we'll go ahead and click on that and take a look at the research guide. So what this does is this compiles all of the databases where you can access all of the biological sciences journals and articles through these various databases. It also gives you a couple of pieces of information that are important too. Here's the liaison librarian for the biological sciences. So if you're really struggling with this project or any of the projects throughout the course of the semester, this is the liaison librarian that you would want to contact to help you do your research, to find the information. There's several different liaison librarians. This is the biological sciences one. There's another one who works just with the humanities, right? So they're specialists in those fields. So they'll really be able to be helpful. So the contact information is there. The other thing that you can kind of see down here that might be helpful is it's the department homepage. So if you click on this, it'll take you to the, this one will take us to the biology department homepage, I assume. Yeah, and so if you're looking for possibly doing an interview, you know, you could go ahead and click on the faculty and staff here, and it'll give you a list of the faculty, you know, so that'll give you ways to contact the faculty members to schedule an interview. And you also might want to kind of look around that page for more information. So what you have here then is, you know, books and databases, online biology journals, encyclopedias and glossaries. And we'll go ahead and click on, you know, the biology journals. And from here, it still narrows it down even more because there's hundreds of biology journals, right? So you might want to kind of look at, you know, you might want to kind of break it down into what kind of biology maybe you're particularly interested in. Maybe it's evolution or genetics or cytology, right? And when you click on that, eventually it'll pop up. Oh, I think it's coming. There we go. So when you click on this, it gives you the 130 articles that are in that have to do with evolution and biology. So this is still a lot, but what you might want to do from here is just kind of click around. So, you know, just maybe pick one. Make sure we're signed in. And from here, you can look through this entire journal and what kinds of, you know, you can kind of look for possible resources that you think are interesting. You know, we can see here different chapters. How many are there? This is a book, I guess. Oh, it's a, yeah. So you can kind of look through the different chapters. You can kind of get a feel for when you kind of spend some time with this, and you're going to want to spend some time looking around at you know, various journals. You can see maybe what are the kinds of things by looking at these titles: quantitative genetic variation in populations of Darwin's finches. You know, read through those titles to see if you can kind of get a feel for the types of things that people are talking about. You can also kind of get a feel for, these are books, right? So here's this is kind of the format for some of the books that are published within the field. Some of the other sources are going to be journals, and that'll give you a set, you know, if you kind of just click around, you can maybe start to get a sense for the kinds of journals that are published in your field. And when you kind of look around too, I'm not sure where they are, but you can see some of these will also take you to, maybe, I don't know if it was here, but anyway, you know, it might take you to some certain sites. Here's the journals, how to submit. So you can click on submissions. It'll tell you how people submit articles. So the basic idea here is to explore around. It's not to read the articles in depth, but it's to explore to see what types of writing is done in the field, where are people publishing, maybe click on a few of those articles and skim through them to see what the formats are, and or the books as well. And some of these, if you kind of look at this, organization and government agencies, you know, too, will kind of give you more. Here's like the major biology organizations. This might tell you some information about conferences that are held, those kinds of things. You can also maybe get, you know, some kind of a sense for the kinds of communities and groups, and for the web page and the sites that biologists use to just, you know, to give information to one another. So that's the basic idea with the research guide. So the point of looking through the research guide is not to build research, although you may find some sources that you think would be useful. And if so, you may want to just kind of you might want to kind of jot those down and make a note of that, because you might want to return to it later when we're doing like a lit review or something. So that's the main, I think, that, you know, idea of the research guide is just to kind of take a look around, all right? And that'll help you when you go to actually write your own research guide. So the next video I'm going to do is going to go over a couple of the sample student essays to show you how other students have written their research guide.